The Commission on Elections declares there's no failure of elections following the 100% completion of voting and canvassing of votes in the recently concluded barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan polls. While Comelec earlier declared the elections as generally peaceful, it turned out to be the bloodiest in the Bangsamoro region during the past decade, according to a group monitoring conflict risks. The Comelec spokesperson confirmed yesterday the 19 deaths and 19 injuries recorded by authorities nationwide during the election period. The Interior Department is now calling for a smooth transition to newly elected officials.
Sa mga bagong upo, tandaan nyo ito. Importante ma-turn over sa inyo properly ang property ng barangay. Ilang computer yan, ilang kotse yan, etc. Are they in good condition? Baka mamaya pagpunta dyan, wala nang laman yung barangay hall.
Good evening, I'm Menchu Macapagal, sitting in for Pia Ontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. Our first guest for tonight, Comelec spokesperson Rex Laudianco. Good evening, attorney, and welcome to the program.
Magandang gabi po, may mention to all the viewers of Politics as Usual at CNN Philippines. Magandang gabi po.
So, attorney, let's talk about the smallest political unit in the country first, no? The barangay. Tell us more about how it came about.
The barangay is the smallest, indeed, the smallest unit of our governance, and its creation is contained in our Constitution and further operationalized through the Local Government Code of 1991. We are electing one punong barangay and 7 members of the Sangguniang Barangay, which may formulate barangay ordinances in line with the existing. Primarily, the punong barangay is the lowest local chief executive of the smallest local government unit, and they're in charge of the taking care of the village affairs, like before you can file a case for whether civil or criminal case in courts, you must pass through the first to make amends and settle compromise the contending parties, so that the courts will be less clogged. Also, they are taking care of the minor services being provided by the local government unit, like taking care of the garbage disposal, ensuring peace and order, and others that may be usual and may affect the daily lives of the members of the barangay.
All right, so those are the functions of barangay officials, no? But the barangay as a political unit was established in December of 1972. This was during the period of martial law, correct?
That is correct. And then for our current barangays, these are currently made and operationalized through the Local Government Code of 1991.
Why is it important or strategic? Why was it important or strategic then? And how is it still important and strategic today?
First and foremost, the barangay is based on the culture of the Philippines. As you can see, we are 7,100 islands, and not all these islands have the national or local government presence. Each island, when each community, however, needs governance, and each community needs to be able to implement the services of the government, even on the smaller and closest scale. And that is why barangay governments are still maintained, so that the services of the government can be extended to our barangays, even on the farthest areas of our nation. The local government units, of course, we are established in cities and municipalities, and not all their services can be given directly by the LGU. That is why most of the services directly affecting the citizens are done through the barangays, like giving of aids, and we have experienced during the pandemic that the census, the provision of medical services, and others.
All right. Well, Comelec Chair George Garcia earlier said the elections was generally peaceful, despite violent incidents recorded, especially in the Bangsamoro. But a group monitoring conflict risks said it was considered the bloodiest in the past decade. So what went wrong? Some people are saying there was a lapse in security. How do you respond to this?
This is the bloodiest, and because if we are going by the historical data coming from all elections every 3 years, previous election years we have 300 plus, 200 plus election-related incidents and much more number of deaths. In the statute.
Sorry, Attorney, can you repeat that? We seem to have lost the connection.
Hello?
Yes. Could you?
In 2010, we have recorded 90 plus election-related incidents. In 2013, it went down a bit, but then in 2018, it went up to 47, and now, just yesterday, we had 29 validated election-related incidents, resulting into 19 deaths and 19 injuries. There are several others which are being validated still by the PNP and the AFP, but comparing these numbers, coming from barangay and SK elections, and most especially to the national and local elections, this is one of the lowest that we had. And it's really unfortunate that we have deaths, but going by the numbers, we have sufficiently prepared for it. There are flashpoints, but the numbers are way down compared to other years.
And how does the Comelec think that it can do better moving forward?
Moving forward, okay, for 2025 elections, we really have to improve on our security implementation. As you could see, those which we had placed on red categories, we had sufficient number of police and military personnel ready to assist and respond to any incident. The flashpoints, like in Puerto Princesa, we really did not expect that because Puerto Princesa City is not in the red category. It's neither in the orange category. It's actually in the green category, and we did not expect these things to happen. So this is a lesson that we have learned for this barangay and SK elections. We really have to invest and put much more security personnel in place, and we do think that putting two police personnel for every voting center, for every school in green areas may not be sufficient in the next elections. We really have to ask the expansion of the forces of the government, and we really have to think, because we cannot scratch the forces of the PNP anymore. They just have 220,000 plus uniformed police personnel. The AFP, we believe it only has 120,000 uniformed personnel, and the Philippine Coast Guard is just 30,000. By the numbers, it's just not proportionate and sufficient for the 110 million Filipinos that they'll be guarding during elections while performing at the same time the regular law enforcement and security duties. So we have to be more creative in expanding the forces, using force multipliers, and at the same time deputizing more government agencies to serve as a law enforcement and security personnel during elections.
All right. Well, the results of the barangay elections, barangay and SK elections have been finalized. Have all the winners been proclaimed, or have they all taken their oath?
All the winners have been proclaimed. That is within the mandate of the Comelec. They're taking their oaths of office is on the call of the winning candidates. So as of 1:30 p.m. today, we had canvassed and proclaimed the last barangay to have finished their proceedings, and that is Barangay Naguma of Calbayog City, Samar. They a little bit of background, their story for that. And they on October 30, the day of the elections, very early morning, they tried to go to their place of assignment. That's Barangay Naguma, which is around 7 or 8 hours away from Calbayog City. The roads are rough, and most of the time it will take 5 or 4 hours on foot. They have to get off the vehicles and walk towards the Barangay Naguma, which is a hillside barangay. Around midway of on October 30, on mid-route, they were harassed by gunfire coming from unknown groups. So the Army and the PNP elements decided to take shelter and protect our electoral boards, the teachers, and our election officers in the nearby barangay Dinawakan. So it took them some time before the AFP personnel were able to clear the area, and then they decided to go the next day. On October 31, again, at the first light, they went, they tried to make their passage to Barangay Naguma, which they're still 4 hours away. But this time, they were really able to encounter the Wahingon armed group. The armed forces engaged them in a firefight. Our election officer and the teachers and the electoral boards were trapped in the middle of the firefight. After pacifying the situation, then they were able to proceed to Barangay Naguma. The AAP personnel were able to neutralize 5 members of the private armed group.
And they were
So
able
that
to
they
conduct the
neutralized.
elections today.
Yeah,
Yes.
they were able to
Okay.
conduct the elections today, successfully finish it this afternoon.
All right. Well, yesterday, Secretary Abalos in a press con said there should be a 3-week transition period for new officials to ensure a smooth turnover. Do you think this is realistic, or are there circumstances that could delay this?
That amount of time is really realistic because Chairman Garcia and Secretary Abalos had been in discussion to ensure that the transition of the government, local government of barangays from the holdover, those who are in holdover capacity towards those who have been elected and qualified to office in the barangay and SK elections be smooth as possible. As we all know, they have to take care of the inventory of the properties and the monies of this barangay, and it is the hope of both the DILG and the Comelec that the transition will be smooth, everything will be in order so that those who are coming in with their limited 2-year term will be able to perform their functions in the respective barangays properly.
All right. With regards to winning candidates with pending cases, I know there's at least 245. Does the Comelec have a time frame to resolve these issues? Just very quickly, sir.
There are 256 candidate respondents who had been issued the order for suspension of proclamation. And out of the 256, as of latest data, 59 had won, and their proclamations had been suspended per the order, and 67 lost their bids. So the Comelec is indeed intending to resolve all these cases within the month of November, but given the influx of further cases, we might be able to finish and resolve all these cases as committed by Chairman Garcia until December. But for those which are already pending, the Commission and Bank will try its best to resolve all of these during November and perhaps be able to determine whether these candidates will be eventually disqualified, or that they will not be able to take their oaths of office, or that the cases against them will be dismissed, and finally they will be able to take oath on per their respective offices.
All right. Thank you very much. Comelec spokesperson, Attorney Rex Laudianco. We will be back after a quick break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. From the barangay elections, let's shift to the Sangguniang Kabataan. Our next guest tonight is a founding member of the non-government organization advocating for good governance, GoodGov PH. Paul Andre Rosette, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Ms. Menchu, and to all the viewers of Politics as Usual.
All right, so Paul, how does the Sangguniang Kabataan represent the youth?
Well, the Sangguniang Kabataan represents not only the youth sector, but also it serves as a platform for youth participation, because under the RA 10742 or the Sangguniang Kabataan Reform Act of 2015, we have what is called the Katipunan ng Kabataan. So these are your youth constituents that will be convened twice a year, and they will be consulted on matters concerning youth development. So it's not only about the elective and appointive positions, but as well as it's also a platform for us, non-elected youth leaders or non-elected youth constituents to actually participate in the decision-making process of not only the Sangguniang Kabataan, but as well as the local government in general.
Ano po ba yung functions talaga ng SK sa barangay?
Well, first, the Sangguniang Kabataan chairperson is also an ex officio member of the Sangguniang Barangay. So he's also he represents or she represents the youth sector in the policy-making body, the Sangguniang Barangay, as a local legislator. And then the SK chairpersons will elect among themselves the SK Federation President at the municipal or city level and at the provincial level. And they will be an ex officio member of the Sangguniang Panlungsod, Sangguniang Bayan, and Sangguniang Panlalawigan. So in terms of policy-making, they provide youth perspective on policies, on local ordinances, and At the barangay level, in general, the Sangguniang Kabataan implements youth development programs centered on 10 centers of participation, including education, health, economic empowerment, and etc.
All right, well, let's discuss the beginnings no, of the SK during the time of Amy Marcos's Kabataang Barangay. What was the vision then, and how did it really evolve into the SK of today?
Well, the Kabataang Barangay, no, as mentioned, started during the Marcos Sr. administration through Presidential Decree 684. So the vision back then was to involve the youth no, in public affairs and local governance, as well as let the youth no, be empowered to implement programs on education, sports, at different barangays. However, with the appointment of then the presidential daughter, Amy Marcos, now Senator Amy Marcos, the Kabataang Barangay was then perceived to be a breeding ground for nepotism, political dynasties, and that actually permeated throughout the development of Sangguniang Kabataan eventually by 1991. So by 2013, there was this contemplation about abolishment of SK being a breeding ground for corruption, ineffective governance, and just another tool no, for political dynasties to maintain their power. But the youth advocates, the coalition of youth advocates still fought for the Sangguniang Kabataan because they believe, no, despite these notions no, or connotations about SK, they still believe that this is an institution where we can not only be represented, but we can actually participate in youth governance, local governance and local development.
All right.
So that's why in 2015, it resulted to the RA 10742 that we have right now, wherein nagkaroon po no, ng mga reforms and introductions to the Sangguniang Kabataan that will enable the Sangguniang Kabataan to be more effective and more accountable to the people.
What do you think is the biggest achievement of the SK so far, and what can it still do in the future?
Well, going back to the pandemic, a lot of Sangguniang Kabataan councils, no, different barangays really step up their game. No? They introduce innovation on how to serve the youth constituents more effectively and efficiently. So there were Sangguniang Kabataan not only who raised funds for example, loading allowance for the students, since the learning modality, especially back then, we shifted to the online learning. So I think during the pandemic, we saw a lot of SK councils step up their game, introduce innovation to governance. And I think that's a primer towards more innovation in Sangguniang Kabataan. Especially right now, as ruled by the Supreme Court, we will now have a regular election for barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan election. So they will be compelled to be more innovative and as well as to be more comprehensive in their plans, because they only have 2 years
Yes.
in office.
Well, speaking of the terms, no, Senator Amy Marcos said there's a need to revisit the term of elected officials, if you will, and also the number of representatives per barangay. What's your take on this?
Well, I must agree that we must also revisit the term of Sangguniang Kabataan, because as provided by law, the Sangguniang Kabataan together with the Local Youth Development Council are mandated to draft a 3-year local youth development plan. So if we shorten that time frame, it might not be enough to implement or to properly implement those programs. So I think there's a need to revisit the term of the term or the tenure of the Sangguniang Kabataan officials, particularly because of that. But in terms of let's say expansion, the expansion of the Sangguniang Kabataan composition, I don't think we need that. So I think the 7 councilors, the 1 SK chairperson, and the appointed SK treasurer and SK secretary will already suffice, because again, meron naman pong katipunan ng kabataan wherein the youth constituents are directly involved in decision making, policy making, as well as under the SK reform law, we also have the local youth development council. So this council is composed of different youth and youth serving organizations. So they will collaborate together to draft the local youth development plan. So
Alright.
I don't think there's a need for expansion, but there's a need for strengthening further the mandate and power of the local youth development council as a counterpart and as an accountability mechanism for the Sangguniang Kabataan.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. More from our guest when we return. This is Politics as Usual. You're still with Politics as Usual, and we are on our final stretch. Let's get the final words from our guest. How can the conduct of Sangguniang Kabataan elections be improved, or is it still necessary to this day? Good Gov PH founding member Paul Andre Rosette, your thoughts on this?
Well, the Sangguniang Kabataan still remains relevant up to date because the youth, as recognized by our Constitution, are vital sector in terms of nation building, and thus there's a need for the youth perspective to be integrated in the policy making and decision making from the barangay level up to the city or municipal level up to the national level. So the Sangguniang Kabataan is not only for the implementation of programs at the barangay level, but it's also a tool or institution for youth representation and participation. So I guess the SK remains to be relevant, but of course there's still a lot of room for improvement as well. For example, the enforcement of the local youth development office and local youth development council. So all throughout the Philippines, they are mandated, the local government units are mandated to have local youth development office that shall assist the Sangguniang Kabataan, and as well as to have the institutional memory and continuity, because as we have mentioned, maikli lang po yung term of office ng Sangguniang Kabataan. So mahalaga na magkaroon ng continuity, and the local youth development office provide that kind of continuity. And the local youth development council, on the other hand, serve as a accountability mechanism for the SKs, because under the law, they collaborate together to draft the local youth development plan that shall serve as the basis for comprehensive barangay youth development plans. And at the same time, the council is also responsible for the monitoring and evaluation of the implementation of the local youth development plan. So nagsisilbi itong isang mekanismo para maging accountable o magkaroon ng pananagutan yung Sangguniang Kabataan sa pagtupad doon sa ibinuong plano para sa mga kabataan. Marami po pong kailangan talagang trabahuhin for SK. But
so more accountability and more mechanisms. All right. So thank you very much for joining us and sharing your thoughts, Paul Andre Rosette. Now, we've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or at a family reunion or in Viber groups, and risk warfare, digital or otherwise. But we can talk about it here at this table on this show. Your weekly political appointment fix, Politics as Usual. I'm Menchu Macapagal. See you back here next Wednesday at 8 p.m.